What is up, fight fans? This is time for the MMA plug presented to you by Mile High Sports. I'm your host, Jordan Kurtz. You can give me a follow along online at Comments from the Peanut Gallery. Guys, first and foremost, I want to give a shout out to our whole crew here at the Mile High Sports Network. They are covering all things in the Core 4. Just wrapped up the football season. Danny and the boys were down at the Super Bowl taking care of business. I'm sure there was, no shortage of fun times that were had, there, fellas? As Danny just kind of looks away behind the monitor real quick for me. That tells me all that I need to know right there, folks. Make of that what you will right there. I can say from, I guess, a Broncos fan and an AFC West perspective that I'm glad that the Eagles won. I'm glad that the Chiefs don't go and have that dynasty in that way. I don't ever want anybody else in the division to win but the Broncos. So that's just my quick thoughts from the NFL wrapping up there. But as the weeks proceed, there will be no shortage of headlines with draft coverage, OTAs, all of that. So make sure that you keep it locked here for all of that crew there. There's the SCO show with Danilo that has been rocking it on the social channels. There is the the NHL and the NBA in full swing. Major League Baseball is about to kick off in full-fledged operations for spring training in the coming few days. So again, make sure that you check out all things here at the Mile High Sports Network. Hit that like, share, and subscribe button wherever possible. Switching over here to the Colorado slate for everything coming up. Always want to stress that message. If you have the opportunity to buy the tickets directly from the athletes on these cards, please do so. Whether it's the paper tickets or using their name in the promo code or the drop downs on the online point of sale sites or for the pay-per-views, that definitely helps them as far as their commission and being able to grow their platform for future opportunities. Running down the slate, we have on February 24th, BYB 37 Denver Brawl 4. That's going to be going down at the Stockyards Event Center. Going to be a few of the bigger national names to recognize on that card, but one that I'm really looking forward to seeing on there, and he's a mainstay. He's been on the program before of the MMA scene here in the Denver area and in Colorado. He is a 7-1 welterweight that is Ben Mr. Alaska Bennett. He just loves violence. He said on his social media post the other day that obviously the UFC is still the goal, but no one said that he can't have any fun in the process. So he's going to go out there and bang it out with no gloves and get after it on the 24th. Shout out to you, Ben. Following that, we have a lot of events going on the next weekend. I mean, you have Muay Thai State Championship that's going to be happening on weigh-ins February 28th, day 1, March 1st, championships March 2nd. That's going to be essentially, like I say, a 3-day affair there. We have Colorado Combat Club making our return on March 1st at the Stampede. We have 5 pro fights on the card. We're going to have a multitude of elimination bouts as well. It's definitely going to be some fights that I think on the local scene, you have to come and check out. You have friend of the program, Miguel Barrientos, who is going to be on the show, and also the Steel City Kid, Nico Cornejo. He's going to be taking on Miguel in that main event. That's a lightweight matchup with 2 guys who have an all gas, no breaks type of style, and they are ready to go to war. You have a couple of other fights on the on the card. You have a couple of pro Muay Thai bouts. Again, that's going to be a matinee card. Get yourself in and out in the afternoon, be able to be out and about for the rest of your evening. Or if you're feeling froggy, head on down to Colorado Springs at the Colorado Springs City Hub for Battle MMA Championships. Going to be a lot of the Southern Colorado MMA fighters showcased on that card. The next week after that, you have a massive 30-fight show going down at the Blue Arena in Loveland for Sparta Sports and Entertainment. Friend of the program, Aaron Beltran, he's going to be in the co-main event on that card. There's going to be a multitude of disciplines being shown that day. There's going to be MMA, there's going to be bare knuckle boxing, there's going to be regular boxing, kickboxing. So a lot of fights to be able to go out there and check out. One of my teammates, Juan Sarios, he's going to be on the card. So shout out to the Roddy. You then have the weekend after that. There is always a considerable amount of Colorado fighters that are on the Midwest Championship fighting cards. This is a show that's put on by Russ Jones out there in North Platte, Nebraska. it's a small town, but you really get a lot of value for these cards. The production that they put in, the entire town rallies around the card. In the venue that they have it at, there is, 1,000 plus people that they pack into this little spot. You can really feel the electricity, feel the energy in that arena. And I think that this is going to be a fun card to check out. You have a couple of Denver mainstays who are going to be fighting for that welterweight championship. You have the challenger, Caleb Crump, who is going to be taking on the champion, Austin Osmosis Jones. Austin, multiple time friend of the program. Love Caleb too as well. Austin has been a coach, training partner, so on and so forth for me for years upon years. Caleb has been someone who I have been friends with, have called many of his fights, have interacted at, countless events and shows throughout the years. This is, again, two veterans who have a tremendous amount of combat sports experience. Both of them collegiate athletes. One of them college wrestling. One of them was a running back at Nebraska. They both have a plethora of experience across combat sports disciplines as a whole. Caleb has competed all over the world as a submission grappler. Austin has coming up on, roughly around 30 professional MMA fights. He is also a black belt in jiu-jitsu. This is a matchup that, like I say, you have the opportunity to see two of the vets of this weight class in this Denver area competing for that Midwest Championship title on March 15th. Definitely worth checking out there. To switch up to the weekend recap, we're going to cover a couple of different shows from the weekend. We're going to talk about CJJC 24 Grapple Bowl that happened here locally, and we're also going to give a quick little rundown of UFC 312, the pay-per-view that happened down under. So at Grapple Bowl, I would have to say right off the rip, in the main event, I got to give the performance of the day to Basil Hafez. Basil is the active UFC fighter who took on a very defensively sound through, for as much as he possibly could, Donald Rosenau of the Subhounds. This was just a situation of Basil is a really talented grappler, and his exchanges with Don and his flow from position to position with relentless attacking opportunities all the way up until the point where he secured that finish. You have to give it to him. There was a considerable amount of exciting matches, great finishes on this card, but based on the levels of these two competitors and the technical execution, I have to give Basil the performance of the day. You had a hard-fought battle in the co-main event that went all the way through double OT with Nico Radic and George the Buzzsaw Martinez. Nico wins by decision. Again, it's one of those that it was a very back and forth matchup in terms of the positional battle. Nico trying to invert, trying to get to the legs. George being more of that wrestle jitsu guy, playing the top positions, neutralizing the threats and trying for his opportunities when they were there. A lot of back and forth with the chess match, and neither guy really had a very serious threat on the finish. And that's a respect to both of their abilities right there. And it comes down to just the interpretation of who did they think was doing more, George playing the positional battle on top or the activity with Nico on the bottom. Congratulations to Nico Radic, the head coach and owner of 10th Planet Parker there. You had famous Amos Aguirre picking up the round one Kimura. You had Alexandra Anderson of the Sanctuary picking up the straight ankle submission in the second round. That one was it was crazy to see that matchup because there was moments that they each had. There was some exchanges back and forth, and then Alexandra was able to be resilient through some of the adversity that she faced and pulls off the leg lock. Hey, have to give credit to her for being able to kiss fire and walk away whistling in that matchup. You had Addison Flores, who picked up the victory over Aislinn Fletcher. D'Anthony Muniz always goes out there with a flair of a style. I said it last week that he has a risk it for the biscuit type of game, and he went out there against Jared Huerta, who will be competing on that aforementioned MCF card on March 15th. He is their current amateur flyweight champion. So you can check him out over there. Hey, D'Anthony is a very skilled, very specialized grappler in relation to Jared being a little bit more raw on the grappling side, but when he can mix up the strikes in the mix, he's got a lot of Diaz in him. At the weigh-ins, he wore a Nick Diaz Army hoodie. He had a little bit of Diaz in just his demeanor and his approach. That translates a lot more when you're able to throw some punches and some strikes in the mix. But congratulations to D'Anthony. Again, this kid is active in competition. He had a couple of big call outs, and we'll see how the matchups play out as this time grows forward. The New Era product, again, got that victory in the first round by Darce choke. Opening up the main card, we had our first ever wrestling match. As far as my personal reflection on this, I think that it's a massive move for the growth of wrestling within the region. Just a few minutes up the road at Western Wyoming, we have the best junior college wrestling team in the entire country, back-to-back national championships, chasing their own little dynasty there. And we have Colorado top team, who is led by Alicia Bowling and Joe Warren in Northern Colorado. There is a scene for wrestling specifically here. There just hasn't been maybe necessarily the opportunities for growth to match other parts of the country, but hopefully this is something that aids in that direction, or some of these guys who are coming out of college, who are starting to get into fighting and have moved to the Denver area. This is just another opportunity for them to go out there and compete in that very specific skill set. Same thing, guys who have been doing jiu-jitsu, maybe they want to round out the wrestling specific end of their game. This gives them an opportunity on a bigger platform to be able to go do so, where you're actually competing against someone as opposed to just being in the training room. The stakes are always that much higher when the lights are on. You had Bruno Nicoletti, no stranger to the bright lights, NCAA All-American, member of the Brazilian Olympic team. He goes out there and he gets a tech fall in this very first wrestling match. The thing in that is it's very tough to find someone who has those type of credentials that was available to be able to take this matchup against Bruno. So I have to give nothing but respect and credit to Levi Miller of the Subhounds for stepping up and taking the challenge. He put up a fight as long as he possibly could. It was just a situation of, would you have someone who has the chops in that very specific discipline, the way that Bruno does, who trains with some of the highest of the high caliber guys that Bruno has and has competed at the levels in which he has done? That's some irreplaceable experience. And I spoke to that with another competitor on the card who she picked up a victory on the prelims. We had Kyra Dial, who she's now in a 3-match win streak at CJJC. And her opponent, Bahar, is a really tough grappler in her own right. She had spoke to my broadcast partner, Luis Rodrigues, that one of her aims was to be able to work from the top and to use some of her wrestling. That at times, whether it's in grappling specifically or in combat sports, could be ill-advised depending on who your matchup is, because in this instance, you can't replace you may have been spending a lot of time in the training room working on wrestling, but in the case of going up against a Bruno, going up against a Kyra, Don against Basil, you're working against 15 to 20 plus years of experience that these respective athletes already have in that one discipline. And in some cases, the more and more that you grow further on within their training career, it's even more. For someone like Bruno now, who is into his mid to later 20s, that's 20 plus years of wrestling experience that he has on the mats. You are not going to replace that with a couple of years, a few months, whatever it may be, of specific training. It's just not going to happen. You can go out there and you could put up as much of a valiant effort as possible, and you can shore up a lot of gaps with hard work, consistency, durability, so on and so forth. But when that opponent has all of those same attributes in relation or in addition to the experience, again, it's just something that's always going to be tough to overcome. And that's why you got to figure out which styles work out the best for you. But continuing to run down the list here, you had Garrett Munson of Black Tie Jiu-Jitsu with a rear naked choke over the always tough, once a Marine, always a Marine, Travis Rice of Easton. Following that, you had Edgar Renteria of DCO with a triangle in the first round. You had Adam Lechuga, who had a really bad ankle sprain coming into the match. Got it taped up before the matchup, went out there and put on an impressive performance, picks up a victory over Owen Batibar. You had Josh Oakes picking up the armbar over Robert Taylor of 10th Planet Parker. Robert Taylor he's always fun to watch. The kid is a talented grappler and he always goes out there and takes on tough tests. I know that this one didn't go his way, but I like watching that kid compete. He always has a good attitude going out there and competing. You had a couple of grizzly bears. This was like grizzly jitsu out here. Jason Reyes of Black Tie taking on Alexander Lares. Jason Reyes picks up the victory there. You had Lucas Gately of Academy of Grind picking up the triangle victory in the first round of regulation. Kristen Barrett of Chroma picked up the decision victory over Michaela Hernandez. Chris Burbine made the business trip from North Platte, Nebraska. The Vicious Cycle Crew product picks up the decision victory. You had Sabian Kuritich picking up the victory over Jacob Few. Another guy from the Subhounds there. Subhounds, always competitive, always active on these cards. You had a matchup between Chris De Leon and Jorge Reyes from the farm. You had Langdon King of Logos picking up a triangle victory in the first round of regulation. And starting off the card, Matt Quinones with the victory. Guys, these CJJC shows are continuing to grow, and I love being a part of them. It's a tremendous atmosphere. If you have the chance to come out and see the grappling that we put on, we would love to have you there. We'll keep you updated for when the next show is going to be, as well as anything related into that. But running through UFC 312 real quick for you. Not going to spend too much time on this card. This is drawn a lot of criticism, pretty widespread across a lot of platforms from a lot of the quote-unquote experts, pundits, whatever, if you will, that this wasn't the greatest of cards, that this was lackluster, that this didn't deliver, that last week's card in Saudi Arabia was better, blah, 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 so on and so forth. There's yeses and nos to that. I mean, I have a hard time giving you that complete stamp when the very first fight of the night, you have a one-punch knockout that happens in like 20 seconds. That's impressive. You have an absolute war between Hong Zhu and Cody Steele. Those were on the Fight Pass prelims. Then we get into the actual prelims. Alexander Topuria, brother of champion Ilya Topuria, as advertised. Couple of big scoops and slams. Impressive all the way around in the cage. No, I think quality fight as advertised there. Prelim main event. You have a clacker between Jack Jenkins, who hopefully Jack Jenkins is healing up all right. He had to be hospitalized after the fight with, I believe it was a torn cartilage in his, or torn thyroid cartilage that left an air leak, something to that effect. I'm probably butchering the diagnosis, but it was something of that nature that was serious that had him hospitalized following that fight. He did lose that fight to Gabriel Santos. However, starting off, Jenkins was a couple of seconds, maybe one more strike away from finishing that fight. He had Santos hurt. He had him flashed. Santos was ultimately able to prevail and pick up the victory there. You have a back and forth battle like that. I don't get the criticism. Opening the main card, you have a battle between a guy who now it's crazy to say that he's been in the UFC for more than a decade, and he's still barely at 30, early 30s, in the Celtic Kid and Jake Matthews. Jake Matthews got in the UFC at a very early age. He's had some ups and downs throughout his years, but man, his boxing, the way that it was on display against Francisco Prado the other night, to me, that was a fantastic performance from Jake Matthews. Yeah, did he mix it up and did he take some shots in the process? Sure, but Prado's also a really good fighter. That's why he was in that position coming into that fight at what was it at 12-2 coming into the contest, something to that effect. Prado also wasn't having to worry about completely depleting and draining himself, going all the way down to 55 the way that he had previously. No, that was a good matchup. That was a fun fight to watch. Jake Matthews just continues to grow within his career. That's back-to-back wins for him now. He's on a little bit of a roll. He called out Neil Magny here out of the Denver area, but I don't know if that matchup is something that will ultimately be made. But I think that Jake Matthews again, like that was an impressive performance, and it was fun to watch. And maybe I'm just of the hardcore side of things, and these might not all be A-list names that jump off the screen at you, but they were fun fights to watch. Not all of them are the most technical, but some of the best or the most entertaining fights. You can throw technique out the window. It's the war of attrition. That was kind of the next fight with Jimmy Crute and Rodolfo Bellato. Jimmy Crute and Rodolfo Bellato, they went to war with each other. Jimmy Crute had him on crooked legs in the first round, but sometimes in going for the finish and you don't put them out, you punch yourself out in the process. Jimmy Crute was very visibly fatigued by the middle of the second round, and he never really got his win back, but that was also in part due to Bellato being able to continue to just chop at the lead leg. Jimmy was having some of his best success when he was coming in hard with that power jab 1-2 that he was just sticking right down the middle. That was where Jimmy was at his best, where he is putting weight on his lead leg and driving through with the torque. The continued chopping of that lead calf diminished the effectiveness as the fight continued. And then also, with that being said, he no longer had the ability to drive off of that lead leg to secure his takedowns the way that he might have been had that leg not been compromised. This is now for the second time in his last 3 fights that Jimmy Crute has gone to a draw in the fight. First round, 10-8 in favor of him. Next 2 rounds, in majority on the cards, went to Bellato. Will they run that one back too? Who knows? I mean, that's kind of an unsettled score. They offered him that same opportunity against Alonzo Menifield. We'll see. Justin Tafa against Talison Teixeira. Talison Teixeira is a terrifying Brazilian coming in at 6'7", 6'8", around in there, just shy of that heavyweight limit at 265 pounds. Massive elbow to start the fight that shatters Tafa's nose, throws a knee to the body. Tafa basically from that point says, "No mas, I want no more." Goes down to a knee. Fight gets called off right away within the initial exchanges of that first round. In the co-main event, this is probably the fight that surprised me the most on the card. And I don't know, by the way that Patchy Mix put out a statement for Tatiana Suarez, he was a cornerman, and that's also her boyfriend, that it leads me to believe that there might have been some sort of injury for Tatiana going in the mix. But then again, at the same time, that's been the story of Tatiana's career, if that's the case. But it doesn't negate that in some of those, through 5 rounds, it was almost a shutout. Tatiana had a good first round, but beyond that first round, and especially after she kind of lost the scramble at the very first round, she didn't look confident or she didn't look secure in herself in between the first and the second round. Like, she basically dominated all but those last few seconds, but then she's already back on the stool asking, "Did I win? Like, did I win that round?" Well, yeah, of course. And I get sometimes that's just being in competition, being in the moment. You can say that maybe it's the time away, it's the ring rust, whatever, if you will. There is also, I believe, something that could be to it, that what was the psyche that was affected by it? I've never seen someone's knee get split open the way that Tatiana's did when she blasted into the cage for the takedown. Correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, I've seen feet, I've seen toes, I've lots of other body parts. I've never seen a knee get split open that way. And it was a nasty cut. It wasn't the worst thing in the world, but it was certainly something that I'm sure played a factor in some of her potential tactics, especially driving, maybe driving off of her knees. She started to feel more split to the skin. I don't know how that felt. I can't put myself in her position there. I do know that on the audio exchange between her and her corner in between one of the rounds, she was asking how bad the cut was, and she didn't even want to look down at it. That leads me to believe that this was impacting her. This was having some sort of role in her psyche and her processing of the events that were going on. That, and again, doesn't mean that, that it's an excuse or that it absolves her from losing the other 4 rounds by any means, but it was a factor. It was something that played a role, but got to give Zhang Weili her flowers on the other side. She had never had somebody who could wrestle the way that Tatiana could, and she had a tough time answering that in the first round. Following that, though, Zhang Weili was pretty much in the driver's seat from there on out. I thought that the commentary team just completely glazed everything about Zhang, calling her to go to the division, all that. I disagree. She is a very great fighter, but she lost twice to Rose Namajunas, who Rose also beat the other person who is considered, if you were to name the top 3 people of the women's strawweight division, you would say Zhang Weili, Rose Namajunas, Joanna Jędrzejczyk. When one of those people has a collective 4 victories over the other 2, how can you put somebody else above them? I mean, I know that on the broadcast, they're trying to sell you on the moment. They're trying to sell you on the prestige of Zhang and what she's doing right now. But have we forgotten the accomplishments of Rose? Have we forgotten that she knocked her out? That she knocked Joanna out? Have we forgotten history? I don't know. Tough one to be able to sit by that comment right there without at least adding some comments of my own. The main event. Here's the thing, guys. Now, Sean Strickland drops this fight against Dricus du Plessis. Dricus du Plessis has gone out there and has proved time and time again that while his style may be unorthodox, his style is effective. Technically, he has continued to improve. He has gotten better. There were things that he did that were from a tactical standpoint or from, I guess, from a technique. Everybody always wants to criticize Dricus's technique. I have done so myself. But there were things that he did that were a lot more sound in this matchup than have ever been before. He has continued to evolve, whereas I think the story for Sean in this fight, Sean has not evolved. Sean Strickland has a style that, while it is effective against a lot of people, once you figure it out, you figured it out. And I think now that on the biggest of stages, the best of the best have a beat on what his game plan is. He's going to try to work behind the jab. He's going to use the teep and the push kicks. His combinations at large are going to be a 1-1-2 and a 1-1 wide 4. That's basically what he's throwing the majority of the time in the process. So if you can figure out, or if you can time what he's doing, then, and especially when he's not really deviating from his Philly shell, he's not choosing to take any additional risks beyond that. It's something that those guys at the highest of high levels can figure out, as Dricus has now twice. I do agree with some of the advice from some of the others out there, like a Mighty Mouse Johnson, who has said that Sean needs to be humble enough to make adjustments to his own training style. Like, Sean is very notorious for basically doing majority sparring. He will do a wrestling day, but other than that, for the most part, he's sparring. Well, if you're only sparring, if you're only doing live rounds, you're not doing a lot in terms of situational drilling, adding any different wrinkles to your game, or switching things up so your patterns aren't so predictable. You're no longer growing. You are stagnant. And now, especially because you were a champion at one time, you are now going to be a guy that they try to build people's name off of. You are going to be a guy who that is a springboard or a gatekeeper situation. And if you can't evolve, you will never be able to get yourself back into the title contention situation. And I think that that's something that Sean has to be humble enough with himself to go and try to evolve his style. And it's not that, again, it's not that he doesn't have other tactics. Sean is a pretty solid grappler. We don't see him ever use it in his fights because he doesn't choose to, but he is a black belt on the ground. He isn't a bad wrestler. He has other tools, but he just hasn't chosen to use them. And I get it. He's had this very brash take this, oh, well, we're going to the war, or we're going to the death, Dutchman, and we're going to war and all this. And his style isn't necessarily that. And he's getting raked over the coals for it by some of the media pundits and all of that this week. But I will definitely second the notion that Matt Brown offered out there. Why are we now just finally making someone, I guess, why are you trying to hold him accountable now at this point? Like, fighters have said this in terms of promoting fights or have used that sort of verbiage for as long as selling price fights has existed, that we're going to go to war and all. Some guys have a more defensive style and a more tactical approach than others. While Sean has that verbal approach, his style is a much more defensively sound, and he got his nose broke in the process. He was left leaking, but I mean, he stayed fighting. He didn't completely crumble. He did continue for the entirety of the contest. Him and Rodrigues have 50 minutes in the cage spent together. He reset his own nose in the middle of the round while he had Rodrigues flying right at him. So for those that are kind of questioning any sort of, toughness or saying that he broke or that he quit, like, I think we should pump the brakes on some of that talk. A little bit more on that later. But moving to this week's card, we're going to talk about a few of the matchups on here. A couple of them are very close to home. We have the main event matchup this weekend going down at the Apex. We have Jared Cannonier taking on Gregory Robocop Rodrigues. Jared Cannonier, former title challenger, number 7 ranked middleweight. He's looking to put himself back in the win column. He's faced back-to-back losses, but he hopes that he can capture lightning in a bottle. He's coming up on he's on the back nine. That's for sure. When you're at his age, the best days have passed when you're around 40. Gregory Robocop Rodrigues looks way older, but he's like 10 years younger. Gregory Rodrigues is going to come in there with ridiculous punch through your soul type of power, but he's also a world champion grappler. I don't know that Jared has, outside of being able to put outside of being able to put Robocop out with a single strike, I don't know that he has the tools to be able to outlast Robocop. Plain and simple. I think that this is a big breakout opportunity for Gregory Rodrigues. And yeah, unfortunately, Father Time, as we've said time and time again on this program, Father Time favors no man, and the killer gorilla, Jared Cannonier, will not be an exception to that this weekend. In the co-main event, we got our boy, and we're going to have him on the program next. We got UC boy, Youssef the Moroccan Devil Zalal. He's in his first UFC co-main event opportunity. He's taken on number 10 ranked Calvin Kattar. Calvin Kattar, the cartel product. He is a fixture of that featherweight rankings, but Youssef the Moroccan Devil Zalal is on a 3-fight win streak, coming back into the UFC for this second tenure. 3 finishes coming into the matchup, and I'll let Youssef talk a lot more about his thoughts on the fight and everything in our next segment when we talk to him. But again, I think that this is a tremendous opportunity for our friend of the program to go out there and put himself in the rankings discussion once we are in the seat here with the program next week after the rankings update comes along. In the feature bout, you have a middleweight matchup between Dylan Budka and Edmund Shabazian. I think that this is a get-back opportunity for Edmund Shabazian. Dylan Budka is a tough kid, but Edmund Shabazian was once literally called the Golden Child. He was the prodigy out of Glendale Boxing Club under the tutelage of some of the guys like Carl Parisian, Manny Gambarian, Ronda Rousey, so on and so forth. Has since rerouted his career into Vegas, and he's just had an up and down level of results ever since he made that fast climb into the rankings. And then believe it, the very first time where it really set him back was the Brunson fight. And then he's had some mixed ones since. He had some success against Gerald Meerschaert. Gerald was able to ultimately outlast him and finish him by guillotine, or excuse me, finish him by submission. This should be an opportunity for Edmund to go out there and get himself back in the winner's circle. The next fight following that, though, I think is a matchup that this one is flying under the radar, but you have all the makings for a potential fight of the night. We haven't seen Nazim Sadykhov for over a year now, but this is a tremendously talented fighter. He's taken on Ismail Bonfim, another guy who goes out there and is willing to put himself in the fire and take risks on the chance to go out there, dare to be great, and find his finish. Next matchup after that, we have friend of the program, Andre Petroski. He's taken on Rodolfo Vieira. Middleweight matchup right there. You have a couple of big, strong dudes, one who is a wrestling base, one who is a jiu-jitsu champion base. I think that Andre has the tools to go out there and to be able to beat Rodolfo. I think that Andre's wrestling is going to allow him to maintain that top position, and either it's going to be a club and sub, some ground and pound, or Andre will potentially find something in a front headlock position. Rodolfo does have a tendency to get tired. We'll see how that plays out. Opening up the main card, you got Connor Matthews taking on Jose Delgado. Main event of the prelims, you have Angie Overkill Hill taking on Caitlin Souza. Jared Gordon, he's taking on Kwawe Fernandez. That is a matchup between a rising prospect and a tried and true veteran. Fernandez wants to go out there and he wants to have highlight reel knockouts. You have Jared Gordon, who is just tougher than an old leather boot type of vet who has fought a lot of the who's who in the division. Definitely a matchup to keep your eyes on there. And then you have a matchup I think that, again, another Bonfim brother who goes out there with an exciting style and takes some risks. He's taken on another guy who he has some of the most explosive power in the entire division, and that's Chaos Williams. Chaos Williams made his debut. I watched that on the same card that Youssef made his debut, UFC 247 in Houston back in 2020, February 2020. He put the lights out on Alex Morono early in that first round. And ever since then, he's been a guy who he comes looking for 3 checks every single time he fights. You have another friend of the program, Elijah Smith. He is going to be taking on Vince Morales. This is Elijah's debut. Elijah made his way into the UFC by way of the Contender Series this last fall. He has taken on a multiple-time veteran in Vince Morales. This is going to be a tough test of a veteran who has seen a lot of tough competition throughout his career, has fought the likes of Chris Gutierrez, Jonathan Martinez, those sorts of guys out there. But then Elijah Smith, though, speed kills. And this kid is from point A to B, one of the fastest guys that the roster has to offer, especially in that 135-pound division. He is a second-generation fighter. His pops, Gilbert Smith, was on The Ultimate Fighter a couple of seasons, had a fight there. He was the RFA world champion. This is a kid who has grown up around fighting, and I've had the blessing of being able to follow from the very beginning of his career. I think that this is the start of a very successful run for Elijah Swift Smith. Rounding that off here, folks, we have a couple more matchups of ranked fighters. You have a heavyweight fight between Dontel Mays taking on Walter Walker. Walter Walker is the brother of Johnny Walker. And then you have a matchup between Julia Avila taking on Jacqueline Cavalcanti. But now, folks, we're going to switch up here. We're going to talk to our friend, our longtime buddy of the program, Youssef the Moroccan Devil Zalal. Back to the MMA Plug presented to you by Mile High Sports. I'm Jordan Kurtz. I am here in partnership with our friends over at Punch Drunk Gamer. We are here with a special guest today. We have making his co-main event debut for the UFC. This is a massive opportunity. Longtime friend of the show, Youssef the Moroccan Devil Zalal. How you doing, my friend?
I'm good, my man. Thank you for having me again, but I appreciate you.
Absolutely, Youssef. Always a pleasure to speak with you. You know, we just always got to make sure the camera's rolling because it's pure gold whenever Youssef Zalal is in the mix, whenever there's media, content, anything along those lines.
Man.
Pure entertainment, ladies and gentlemen. A true superstar in the making. First question, though, here, Youssef. How did training go for this fight, and did you have a relatively healthy fight camp? No need to pull back the curtain too much, but overall, you know, how's the body feeling?
Oh man, it feels amazing. I definitely did. It's not ever a healthy camp. I don't think it's like just always stressful and always more work and all this stuff, especially at this level, at this fight, and the co-main event, and then the name, and obviously all that stuff. So I'm definitely just grateful just to be alive, obviously, and then to go do what I love and do what I enjoy. So definitely good, and we're ready to go.
With Calvin Kattar being a strong boxing presence, you've also, throughout your camp, we were able to see through your YouTube channel that you had guys who are known for their boxing ability, like Justin Gaethje's of the world, coming in to help you out. Have you had the opportunity with him before this camp, or was this kind of a new venture bringing in outside looks like a Justin Gaethje for this particular camp?
Oh, bro, this is the first time I ever trained with Gaethje, so that was an honor, and I'm so grateful for that opportunity. I was like a big fan, you know. I was like, oh my God, I'm going with Justin Gaethje, so that was like excitement for me. So yeah, man, just to see the knowledge and the experience that he has and the energy that he brings, like you're like, wow, like this is the actual energy he brings into the fight. Like it's amazing. So I'm just grateful just to get that opportunity. I didn't care if he was the same as Kattar or not. I really didn't care. All I cared about was just kind of get that opportunity and then get that learning experience, and that's what's important in this game.
You kind of touched on it right there, but to piggyback off of that response, what does training with a guy who has striking prowess add to your arsenal of attacks and your game?
Oh, bro, it means a lot. Just kind of have that little experience going into a fight. It doesn't have to be with Kattar. It can be with other guys like Ilya Topuria, for example. Like he's a short guy, stocky guy, really good boxer. So I just want to be ahead of the game a little bit. But like I said, man, I'm just grateful for the opportunity and the experience just to get that knowledge now instead of later.
What are some of your concerns with this matchup with Calvin Kattar? And on the opposite side of that same coin, where do you see some of your advantages?
Oh man, every fight I'm concerned about everything, bro. I'm concerned about the striking, the wrestling, the jiu-jitsu, and everything. I know a lot of guys say he's a boxer, but obviously he's been at the highest level for a long time. So that's kind of like the pressure I put on myself in that part, right? But I think I bring in a lot more IQ than he ever faced, and that's what's more exciting for me. And I'm excited about that puzzle too, to kind of really test that IQ a little bit and see what he brings to the table and what I bring to the table. So that's what I'm excited for, and that's what like wakes me up and gets me excited about a fight.
After your initial tenure in the UFC, where started off hot, then kind of had a little bit of a mixed bag of results. Following that, though, you're now on a 6-fight win streak. What has been the key to turning the ship around and getting yourself back on cart to this trajectory of success that you're on?
Oh man, there's a lot of things. There's my why, obviously getting back to my why did I do this and why I'm doing this, and obviously this all the experience that I had, you know, I feel like I did it at such a young age, and I was just living the hype, you know what I mean? I was like not really focusing on myself and focusing on the growth, you know what I mean? So I think that's the biggest thing, but the biggest of all is my why, and I feel like I'm really pursuing that, and I can't wait to keep pursuing that, and I can't wait to be a world champion.
Again, kind of piggybacking off of that same response right there, but what was the most important thing that you learned after that first deal goes through? You know, you're, for lack of a better term, you're released, you're a free agent out there. What were the things mentally that you were able to learn about yourself, about the game, so on and so forth, that allowed you to then get back to this point?
A lot of things. I feel like the main 2 points is being you. Be you. Stop worrying about what everybody else thinks about you. And that brings me to my second point is stop worrying about what everybody else says. The media and all this stuff. I feel like we focus so much on it. Now I focus on it in a good way. I use it as a motivation, to be honest. But I used to just focus on that, like, oh my gosh, like be respectful. I'm always respectful, but it's like always be like, oh, don't act like this. Don't do this. That's too much. That's this. I'm like, just be you and have fun and then really enjoy the sport, because this sport is brutal, man. And it's like, it's not fun some days, you know what I mean? So you gotta really have some fun and really stick to your roots and be you.
In normal UFC trend or fashion, we typically see that Apex card following a pay-per-view. Sometimes it's a little bit more of a, for lack of a better term, lackluster card in terms of name value and recognition. However, in your case, this is a lot more of a stacked fight night card. You have a ranked matchup in your fight being the co-main, but then also in the main event, with it being middleweights, you have Gregory Hobocop Rodrigues, who is going to be taking on Jared Cannonier. Do you have any thoughts on that matchup?
Bro, I think Robocop, I think he's younger. I think he's younger than Cannonier. Obviously, Cannonier's been longer in the game, and obviously he's a very powerful guy. But I think the youth might have to do something with it a little bit. And then, man, it's just like it's gonna be a dogfight. I feel like both of them just go to war a lot of times. So I'm blessed just to be in that same card and just to get to watch it after that fight. So I'm pretty excited about that.
You're one of only a few fighters in the history of the promotion with Moroccan heritage. What does that mean for you to have an entire country behind you with your massive fan base? And how does that momentum from your countrymen propel you when you come into training, when you go into fight week, so on and so forth?
Man, it's a lot, man. It gives me hope, you know what I mean? And I want to give hope back. That's the biggest thing. I feel like to see that support, to see that love, and to see that, but like, hey, like a Moroccan kid can do this. A Moroccan kid can go to MMA and can go to the UFC. We're so known for kickboxing or soccer and stuff like that. We're not really known for MMA, especially at the highest level. I feel like we're like, oh, yeah, just take him down or just do this, just do that. I feel like I want to turn that a little bit around, you know what I mean? Turn that table around a little bit and then be like, oh, wow, like Moroccans are good at everything. Moroccans good at kickboxing, jiu-jitsu, and all that stuff. And obviously bring hope back to my country and then really get that MMA scene rolling. And hopefully we'll see more in the UFC and then get to have that support even more.
Correct me if I'm wrong, you're the only Moroccan born on the roster.
Yes, sir. I'm the only first born ever Moroccan in the UFC, yes.
Correct. Just wanted to make sure that we had that clear for you out there. You know, I know.
Well, I think the guy, what's his name, that lived in Britain, that went to jail, robbed the bank. He fought in the UFC. I think he was born in Morocco. I'm not sure.
His dad is Moroccan.
Yeah, I know his dad is Moroccan, but I don't know if he was born in Morocco or Britain.
Of the current guys, though, you know, between the Azatars, Nasrat, Hopcross, all of them, like you are.
Yeah, come on, bro. Yeah, you know I'm the one. You know I'm the one. Come on now.
You know, I just gotta make sure that you get out there and represent. You know what I'm saying?
Hey, it's nothing but love, though. They represent my country, and then that's what's important. You know, it's at the end of the day, it's all love, and I can't wait to represent my country, and then obviously they represent countries, so we get more support.
100%. Now, a couple questions just before we tie these things up here for you. Factory X has been the training home to several high-profile MMA fighters for the last decade plus. Are there any other fighters right out here or within these walls in Englewood that the people should have their eyes on with big matchups or fights coming up?
Oh, bro, my teammates, bro. Look at my boy David Unama is fighting Giga. That's a big fight. That's a huge fight, and we both of us gonna crack the rankings this year, inshallah. So that's exciting, man. I'm like, we get to grind together. We get to have some fun. And you got Chris Gutierrez, you got Cody, you got all these guys, man. And obviously, I'm just excited, man, to start it off for the team and then to get everybody going. And obviously, my teammate Colin just started off for us. And 2025 is gonna be a great year for the team, and I can't wait to keep that going.
Now, that all being said, those are some recognizable names on the A-list UFC side. How about maybe some names that maybe people haven't gotten the chance to see on the national level? What are maybe those freshmen and sophomores of the team that you foresee having a bright future?
Oh, bro, there's so many. We got Lolo, we got Bobby Z, man. Those guys have been grinding with the pros, with the pros of the pros, you know, the NFL level, you know what I mean? So for them to be at a regional scene and a local scene, I'm excited for those guys, man, for their future. They're like growing like fast, you know what I mean? So I have to keep up with them and they have to keep up with us. So yeah, those are the two that come in mind, man, and I'm very excited to see what the future look like.
There we have it right there. One last question. It's a two-parter here for you, Youssef. How do you prefer to spend your time away from fighting, and do you play any video games? If video games is your thing, what's your choice of game and platform? You know, Xbox, PS5, PC, whatever it may be.
Oh, bro, spending my time outside fighting, I just go to restaurants and go eat. You know, I love eating. So like I love testing new foods and going out and stuff like that. You know, I'm not a party guy. I'm more of like eating guy. You know, take me home and like eat and stuff like that. So that's what like I'm most excited about. Video games I haven't played in a long time. I don't know why. Obviously it's been hectic for me the last year. It's like this is my 4th fight in 11 months. And yeah, man, I love Call of Duty. Call of Duty is my thing, and that's what I have fun with. Or Formula One, you know, your boy out here gets down a little bit.
To say, ladies and gentlemen, don't let this man fool you. He has a racing simulator in his house. I was not going to let this interview end and asking a question about gaming without bringing that part up, because there are very few people who go through the lengths to be able to go to test car games. Like, I mean, we're talking somebody who is as fully invested as you could possibly be, you know, the full setup, and he drives in real life like it's a video game sometimes too.
Chill out. I'm a nice driver. I'm a nice guy.
UC boy, anything else that you want to get out to the people before we tie this thing up?
No. Thank you guys. Thank you for support, and make sure to tune in February 15th on the Apex card. Then I'm fighting Calvin Kattar, and then I'm excited for this opportunity, and I can't wait to show the fans and show myself how excited we can make this fight is.
There you have it right there, folks. That is Youssef the Moroccan Devil Zalal. He will be the co-main event of the UFC Fight Night card at the Apex in Las Vegas, taking on Calvin Kattar. I'm Jordan Kurtz with the MMA Plug on Mile High Sports in partnership here with Punch Drunk Gamer. Welcome back to the MMA Plug here on Mile High Sports. Guys, we're going to close out the hour by going 3 rounds here. Got my man Danny Bailey behind the boards here. First round, what do we have?
Former WEC and UFC bantamweight champion Dominick Cruz has announced he is out of his fight with a shoulder injury and is officially retiring. How will the legacy of the Dominator be remembered?
In my estimation, he is still to this day the consensus greatest bantamweight of all time. I think that his reign that he had in the WEC, along with his title runs in the UFC, was nothing short of spectacular. He is also able to do all of that, have those title runs, or have that second title run where he comes back from years away due to multiple surgeries. Surgeries to shoulders, surgeries to knees. Got all the way back after a year plus of surgery and rehab on one of his knees at one point, only for the cadaver tissue to reject and have to have the surgery and repeat the process all over again. And through time and time again, was able to get himself back to glory, back to winning that championship. But as time grows on, as we all know, Father Time is undefeated, and Dominick Cruz was no exception to this rule. At this stage, at 39 years old, with multiple shoulder dislocations in the last few weeks of this camp that is now going to require surgery again, it's understandable how Cruz is at peace with walking away. He's came back from so many devastating injuries in the past, as mentioned, but again, we have to just think, or we have to put ourselves in that spot to think, do you want to go through all of that grind of the recovery and the rehab again, only to maybe have the injury, you know, to have a setback or anything? It's a tough position to be in. And especially, again, I could recognize that at 39, by the time that he would be in a position to come back due to the injuries, he's looking at being close to 41. In the bantamweight division, that is less and less forgiving with every day that you are in there north of 35. Has the game grown and evolved since peak Dominick Cruz? Absolutely. However, he was so dominant in his prime run that he changed the game. His use of footwork and angles inspired an entire generation, Youssef being one of them. If you go back and watch some of his early fights, there is so much Dominic Cruz in his style, the way that his footwork, his in and out, the way that he cuts. There is a lot of Dominic Cruz that you see in a lot of fighters now, and it's just kind of grown and evolved. And he was that early person that everybody else kind of adapted, and he was that dominant force early on that everybody else had to figure out how to beat. And he was in that pole position for so long that, yeah, eventually there is enough tape and enough material out there that people can start to game plan for you specifically. And again, his style was not the most forgiving for his body. The sheer and the torque that he would put on his knees with his footwork and the angles that he would create, he oftentimes would work against himself in that process for the injuries. But the way that he was able to be successful with those entries and finding opportunities, again, that's why he was such the dominating champion of the WEC and then into the UFC for so long. I've always been a massive fan of Dominic Cruz on the call, and hopefully we get him for more cards now that he's going to be officially retired. How will he be remembered? Circling back to the original question here, I think that Dominic Cruz is one of those guys who will also be remembered as that tiny dude with giant brass balls who wasn't afraid to stand on business and ruffle some feathers in the process. The way that he called out his colleague Daniel Cormier for not doing his homework for the broadcast and not learning about the fighters or the things that are happening that he's having to make the call on. The way that he called out monster marketing leader, whatever C-level title that you want to add to Hans Molenkamp for holding sponsorship dollars over athletes' heads to have to engage with him on social media. The way that he called out so many of these different things throughout the years, the entire team of Alpha Male for so long. Dominic Cruz, between that, his battles back and forth with Michael Bisping on the broadcast and the anecdotes throughout real life throughout the years, he will be that guy who is known for being just a little fiery dude who was never afraid to back down, never stood down from a challenge, answered all bells coming, and he will always be a champion. That's how he will be remembered.
Former UFC middleweight champion Luke Rockhold criticized Sean Strickland after Strickland's title fight loss, calling him fake and saying that he quit after the broken nose. Are these comments from Luke's interview with Ariel Helwani fair or foul?
You got to take it with a grain of salt. Luke and Sean have known each other for a long time. They've had some roots training with each other out there in Southern California. I think that this is a little bit of Luke trying to keep himself relevant and in the mix, because if we just remember back to the first Bank Center before it was shut down here in North Denver, Luke quit in his bare knuckle boxing fight here in Denver. He got his teeth cracked and he quit in that fight. I get it. The stakes were different. That was a bare knuckle fight where I'm sure he probably got a flat rate of guaranteed money. He's not in a UFC title fight, blah, 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 all of those sorts of things. But nonetheless, he still did quit after getting hurt in the fight. Sean Strickland didn't quit. He continued to fight. Did it change how he approached the rest? Sure. But he didn't quit. He still continued to fight. He could have taken the easy way out. He could have crumbled. He could have done all of the sort of, hey, I don't want to be here, let me out of here type of things. He didn't do that. That's all I got to say.
Patchy Mix was in the corner of his girlfriend Tatiana Suarez last Saturday. The Bellator 135-pound champion has been vocal about his frustrations with the PFL and has publicly asked for his release. Do you want to see him in the UFC?
Absolutely. I would love to see Patchy Mix in the UFC. He's pound for pound one of the best 135-pound guys out there in the world. He is a tremendous grappler on the feet. Definitely something to be seen as to how he would mix it up with the tops of the tops in the UFC. In his current situation, they're not honoring his contract over there. So he should be able to go earn a living in the biggest show in the world. I don't know Patchy personally, but a lot of my friends have spent time in the training room with him, and they say that he is an absolute problem on the mats. Is he someone who can walk into the UFC octagon right away and challenge Merab Dvalishvili for his title today? I don't know, but neither do any of us because he's not being given the opportunity to go and do so. What I do know is that he's 31 years old. He's in his prime years of his career with a 20-1 record. Only loss was to another Bellator champion in Juan Archuleta. But the unfortunate donkey show of this whole PFL merger situation has put him on the shelf, and his words has taken all of the momentum out of his career. I don't disagree with him saying that. His inactivity has certainly hurt his momentum going forward. It's hurt his potential marketability, if you will, him not being able to continue to fight and be active while he is in this era where he has been performing at such an elite level. Him not being able to go out there and fight even on the PFL stage, much less having the chance to be released and come over to the UFC. He just hasn't had the chance to fight, period. He deserves the opportunity under whatever banner to go out there. He is a prize fighter. He does not get paid when he is not fighting. He should have that opportunity, especially given the contractual obligation that they have and what was absorbed. What it comes down to is the PFL does not want to pay him. The PFL does not want to pay him the tender that Bellator had for him, as was the case for a lot of the other people that we've spoken through time in that merger situation. So they're trying to squeeze him out. They're trying to squeeze him out to force him to have to fight for less or to take less money, and he is not willing to do so. And I don't blame him for that at all. I hope that they give him the release and we get the opportunity to see how he stacks up against the best of the best in the 135-pound division, which, as I've spoken to on this program many a times, I believe is the best division in the world. Again, I don't know that he can go in there and challenge for a UFC title right away, but I would love to see him have the opportunity to go in there and mix it up with those guys in the bantamweight division. But just like that, folks, we are all out of time. We want to thank you all so much for tuning in. Let us know what you think. Hit us up on social media at Mile High Sports or me, Jordan Kurtz, at Comments from the Peanut Gallery. We want to thank our guest, Youssef the Moroccan Devil Zalal, for hopping on the call. Big shout out to all of our friends from the program who are going to be competing on that UFC Fight Night this weekend. That's Youssef the Moroccan Devil Zalal, Andre Petrosky, as well as Elijah Swift-Smith. So we want to wish them all the best as they compete this weekend for the UFC. Give them a look there. I'm Jordan Kurtz. Want to thank my man Danny Bailey behind the boards. This is the MMA Plug on Mile High Sports.